3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? This is the Board Game Roamer, and I'm here with an unboxing of a new title from Gameland Games called Tiny Epic Defenders. Excuse me, I was part of the Kickstarter, and I actually got the Tiny Epic Defenders game. This second print, they printed and came out with an expansion called the Dark War, and I also went ahead and grabbed the player mats there, and I got all four. They're all the same. I just got 4 of them, so all 4 players that play can have a mat for their card and their artifacts and such. Skill cards, experience cards, all that can be handled on the mat. So let's take a quick look at this. So of course this is, as I said, by Gameland Games, designed by Scott Alms. Awesome game. I do own the first edition, and I did enjoy the first edition. The second edition, and this is kind of different because usually when you think of second edition, you think of just a reprint, maybe some corrections in terms of verbiage or an improved rulebook or card errors that they corrected in the second run. That is not what this is. The Tiny Epic Defenders is actually a true second edition. So if you remember, Tiny Epic Quest introduced the idea of ITEMeeples. So you have your standard meeple, but you have these little items that you got in Tiny Epic Quest from completing quests that you could add to your meeple, and it gave that meeple powers. Well, this also does the same thing. Tiny Epic Defenders now, the second edition, includes, and it's part of the mechanics of ITEMeeples are part of the mechanics for Tiny Epic Defenders. The second edition also included some reprints, or not reprints, some rebalancing and tweaking of the monsters and the heroes and such. So I'm super excited. I did, of course, get the deluxe edition of both, so there's kind of a mini, I don't want to say mini game, but there's like a mini component that'll be added to this that's not in the retail. But in any case, this is a game for 1 to 4 players. Now, this is worth mentioning. The age on the box says 14 plus. 14 plus is not because of any of the content. It's not for anything as far as how difficult the game is. At least in the U.S., because of the ITEMeeples and the size of those items, how small they are in our hand, they had to put that on there as a warning so that young children could not pick them up. You know, if they pick them up, hopefully the adult in the room would know not to let them do that, but that's the warning on the box. In terms of how young somebody could be to play this, I've heard a lot of people, and my experience has been, I've had a couple as young as even 10 years old be able to play Tiny Epic Defenders. Now obviously they've not tried this, so it would be an interesting comparison, but really in Tiny Epic Defenders, the rules, at least I don't know about the Dark War details yet. I haven't really kept up with it in a while, so there's a lot of it's foggy in my memory. But in the base game, really the rules from the original Tiny Epic Defenders and this are not that different. Okay, it's just updated artwork and the inclusion of ITEMeeples and a little bit more rebalancing in terms of the stats and whatnot of the cards for the monsters and all that sort of thing. So that's really the only difference. And then the Dark War, of course, is a total expansion. The Dark War is actually going to add, you have villagers that are traveling around, additional ITEMeeples, 6 more ITEMeeples. So it is going to expand the game, and I'm super excited about that. I did always love Tiny Epic Defenders, but it was kind of time, I thought, for some sort of, I don't think we're going to need this, some sort of expansion for it to add more content, because you can play this, and I enjoyed playing it. There's only so many times you can play it. This game is a super simple game in terms of rules, but I would say certainly that this is not an easy game to beat. You know, it's funny, you know, a lot of times, and if you watch my channel, you know that I don't do this, but I have seen lots of playthroughs where they'll play through, and it's like, oh man, that just does not look hard at all. This and you know, I think, you know, some people do that and they get lucky and can do it. Some people intentionally, you know, stack the deck. I don't do that, and I think a lot of people don't, but there are some that do. This game is not easy. It wasn't easy before, and I don't think it's going to be any easier now, and I don't think the expansion is going to make it any easier either. But enough of that. Let's get into the box, right? Because that's what we like. So we're going to start, of course, with a core box. Get this baby open. So here's the box. Tiny Epic Defenders. There's the back. You can see the components. The components are very similar. This list is very similar to what we had in the original. So open it up. That's pretty cool because it's got on the sides, of course, as you know, Gamelin Games has a number of Tiny Epic titles. So you can see, Tiny Epic Galaxies there, Tiny Epic Quest, Tiny Epic Western, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. This is a new one that I've also backed the second printing of, and I got the play mat, so I'm really excited about that. So you can see those. Definitely check out those other titles. So what do we got in the box? Well, of course, we have the rule book, and I'm going to do a quick flip through. You can see there's a good number of pictures. How to build the Horde deck. That was always, I like this. Actually, wow. I think that may, yeah, I like this graphic a lot better. The other one was a lot of reading. That graphic I think is going to help. Again, I'm not going to read all these to you, obviously, but essentially it's just like in the original. You're going to have some number of heroes. You're going to have a deck of cards that are going to bring out, and I think this is the mini expansion, so I'll set that to the side for now. You're going to bring out a number of enemies. And those enemies are going to be attacking locations, and you have to defend those locations and go through a deck that continues to get thicker and thicker as you add cards to it until finally you go against a big baddie that's got 10 hit points and that has special abilities, and you're going to work through that. And as long as the castle doesn't fall before you beat the baddie and at least one person's alive, you win. If the castle falls, well, some person will be alive because you don't really die in this game. You just get exhausted and go back to the castle. But if the castle falls, then you lose. So component-wise, of course, we have the flame tokens and your heart tokens for the 4 characters, and the big baddie at the end, the epic foe. Here is your meeple. Now you'll notice, and I'll open this up, you'll notice that these meeples now, just like in Tiny Epic Quest, have the arms, the 2 holes in each side. And the cool thing about this is, let's see if I can find it. I believe there's a cape. Because this was something, oh, actually I like the wings better. And then I'm going to grab 2 more hand items. In Tiny Epic Quest, you just basically had 2 hand items, right? That they could carry. Now, in Tiny Epic Defenders, you have a meeple that on both sides has that hole. So you have some items like these that are hand items, okay? But then you have some items like these, and there's only a couple of them that do exist. You can see that's got actually 2 of those posts in it. So you can actually have your hero carry, for example, 1 back item, and then he could carry, and I don't know what these are exactly, but they can carry 2 hand items just like normal, right? Then they can also carry a back item. So you can see it's pretty cool, right? I thought that was really neat. I thought the ITEMeeples was a really cool idea, and then when they expanded it to the back, I was like, wow. And I know realistically, I mean, to be fair, if you wanted to add the mechanic of having, in this game they call them artifacts, these items. If you wanted to add the mechanic of having artifacts, you wouldn't have to have ITEMeeples to do that. I mean, you could have a card and an ability. But in terms of table presence, I think it does add a lot to it. So let's set this over here. So then we've got, let's look at this first. Then we'll check out those cards. We've got our pack. Oh, there it is. Is that it? Did I lie to myself? Nope, I didn't lie to myself. Good. You've got this pack of cards. This is going to be your hero cards. This is going to be your location cards and your epic foe cards. So let me pull these, separate these right quick. There we go. Alright, so first of all, let's look at the hero cards. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 10 heroes, which I believe, and this is not the deluxe edition part. The deluxe stuff is still over here. Alright, we'll look at that in a second. But I believe that may be more heroes than the other. I can't remember. But you do have some like a warrior, sorceress, barbarian, dark elf ranger, human paladin, merfolk oracle, centaur druid, elf commander, halfling bard. Most of these, and I guess probably all of these were in the original. But you can see on the back now is, on the back now, we'll take this bard for example, is some text about backstory about them. And then on the front, this card has changed. Before, you basically had in the center, the cards were all oriented like this, and you had a track that kind of ran like this, and their stats were down here. Well, they've changed that, and I think this is so much better. You have your life tracker over here, but now you have what you can spend your actions on actually printed on the card, how to defend, how to sacrifice, how to fight, secure, move, and then of course you have your special ability for each of your heroes. Now each of your heroes have a unique special ability that they can trigger. Some of them may be innate, passive, some of them may be active where you have to spend action points to do, but those will be listed here, and I like that. And I also feel like in terms of quality of card stock that these cards are a much thicker card stock, and they seem to be, at least in my hand right now, they feel much more sturdy and much better quality, higher quality, in my opinion, than the original Tiny Epic Defenders. Of course, to be fair, that Tiny Epic Defenders was a long time ago. Gamelin has grown a lot since then, but all the artwork is redone. If you remember the cards from Tiny Epic Defenders, you can really tell when you look at these cards. So here, for example, is the ruins, considerably different. We still have the icons. That's not different. We still have an A side and a B side. That is not different. But you still have the track over here now. It's kind of split out. Artwork style wise is a lot different, which I really like this because it's much easier. There's some break here. So if your meeple gets knocked down a little bit, it's not as big a deal because you can't remember which one it's on. It should be pretty close. And then of course, each location special actions. So there's the one side of the ruins. Then we have the coast, the plains, the forest, the desert, the mountains, and then of course ITEMeeples, the capital city. And this is, you'll notice this one has the 7. If this gets destroyed, then your game ends. So included with this, so you're gonna go through and you're gonna take on some monsters, which I'll show you here in a second. Ultimately, your goal is to defeat one of these epic foes. And so what you do is you're gonna pick an epic foe randomly, presumably, or I guess you can pick one if you know what's coming, but it's a lot more fun if you don't know what's coming. And you're going to place it down. You're going to build your horde deck, your turn deck, and it's going to sit here, or you're going to build your horde deck, and then you're going to build a turn deck. And each time you go through the deck, you're going to take a card off here, and you're going to add it into your turn deck. That'll be over here. And once you get through all these, then you flip this over, and it's going to say, tell you where this shows up and what kind of mayhem it will cause. So we got a demon lord, a colossus, a hill giant, the ancient, a dragon, and a kraken. I believe, excuse me, I believe that most of these, I think these are pretty much the same enemies, epic foes, as before. Again, though, the balance has been changed in the combination of monster cards, the player powers, the dire enemies to balance this out. And also on some, and this is not something that happens on all, but I'll show you this one as an example, the dragon. You'll notice that on the track over here, you have this special symbol, right? Every so often this symbol occurs. And so in addition to its normal ability, which is going to be listed right here, the bottom, and I know you can't see that, I apologize for that, but at the bottom there is something that happens specifically when you drop it to that point. So for instance, on the dragon, when you run into that symbol, all defenders lose 2 health. And some of these have them, some of these don't, and they're not all necessarily in the same location as far as on the health track. They're all kind of close to it, but they're not all necessarily in the same location. So that is the enemies, that is our epic foes, that is our heroes, that is our locations. Okay? So now let's take a quick look. And I may actually need this to open. Let's take a quick look at the cards. There we go. The cards, again, like I said, there's not a huge amount of change in them. They've just been rebalanced where they thought that that was needed. But the general gameplay and the cards that you have generally are very similar, if not exact, to the original game. So, of course, we have now we have artifact cards, and each one of these artifacts. So there's the wings, a hammer, staff, elixir, cloak, spear, shield. Each one of these artifacts, and they're marked on the back as artifact, corresponds to one of these items that are ITEMeeples. So when you get this card, if I get, for instance, the Celestial Idol, I'm going to take that ITEMeeple that is mine and pull this item out of here, and I'm going to put that ITEMeeple on my character to show that he has that. Again, the card will tell you what the power is. So if you lose or break or otherwise don't have, for some reason, an item, it's not the end of the world. It's really more table presence, but it is pretty cool. And there is enough detail, I feel like, probably for somebody that really wanted to paint or that was really good at painting, you could probably paint all these ITEMeeples or items. So, of course, in addition to our normal enemies, let's set those up separate. In addition to our normal enemies, we have the dire enemies, and these are, again, one for each location. They're specific to that location. Depending on the number, you can see the symbol right here. Depending on the number of players, you will pick randomly some number of these cards that will go into the deck, your horde deck, and at some point in time they'll start to show up in your action deck, in your turn deck, and you'll have to fight these. The only way to get these artifact cards is to actually defeat these. And these normal defending, when you're defending a region against a monster, it's normally 1 life. With these, you'll notice, well, I'll show you 2 of them. So the Minotaur actually is 3. So if you defend against the Minotaur, you have to spend and lose 3 life. All the rest of them, I believe, yes, all the rest of them are 2 life. Once you do that, you'll grab a random artifact card, and you'll be able to equip that and use that. You will notice that all of the backs, so there's your artifact cards, then you've got your monster cards, the normal enemy cards. So each card is going to have 2 locations. So in this case, we've got the, what is that, the plains and the forest. So when you draw this card, you're going to raise the threat level in each one of those locations, or your ITEMeeple is going to defend and take a damage, or somehow keep that from happening. And so there's a deck of 9, I believe. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, there's a deck of 9 of these. I will say that I wish that they had increased the number of these. I realize that with 6 locations, it would be hard to do. But one of the things that's not on here, like for example, is like I would like to have seen a card where you had the same place attack twice. So 2 forests, 2 plains. That may have been, hard to balance, then that may be why they did it. But I would like to have seen that. But so there's that deck. Here's the dire enemies that we talked about. And then here is the player card. So each of the 4 colors for players, there's a card. You're going to put this in your deck when you start. And then there's 2 more cards, depending on whether you're playing with 2 or 3 players, that you will add to the deck in order to give you enough turns again to balance it out based on how the game is done. But you'll notice that every single one of these cards has the same back. And the reason that is because when you build your decks and as you add cards in, you don't want to know, they don't want you to know, and then you don't need to know what cards are coming next. So all the backs are the same. Now, if a location is destroyed, so let's not use the castle. That's not a good example. Let's say that in the course of the game, you destroy this ruins. You're going to have extra cards left over, either from monsters or dire enemies or regular enemies. Or you're going to have some extra cards left over, and all you're going to do is you're just simply going to place this card on top of it, and that signifies that that location has been destroyed. And you can move there and defend, but you cannot use its special ability, and any damage that would normally go to it goes against your castle, which is how your castle gets attacked and you lose the game. Also, you cannot, at least normally you cannot, unless there's a skill or artifact or something that changes this, you cannot sit in your castle and defend. Oh, that's not a good example at all. That's not the castle. You cannot sit in your castle and just defend against the attacks. If the attack hits the castle, again, unless there's a special skill or card to undo this, you're going to continue to raise the threat, raise the threat, raise the threat, until eventually your castle is gone. So you have to get out and you have to be active in what you do. This game is very reactionary. I was actually watching oh gosh, and I wish I could tell you it was, because I just not too long ago watched it. The gang, or something like that. I found it through Board Game Geek, one of the videos, or just searched on YouTube for Tiny Epic Defender, how to play Tiny Epic Defenders, and they were one of the first few videos. The game, he loved the game. But he said if he had to ding it for something, it would be because it's reactionary, and that's not necessarily a slight against the game. That was just his personal preference, is that he liked to be able to plan stuff out. So he said, for example, he had played Tiny Epic Galaxies, which is equally as strategic. They're all very strategic, but Tiny Epic Galaxies, you can kind of like plan your moves ahead a little bit more. You're not constantly reacting, and there is some planning that you can do and kind of follow plan. This is very much reactionary. Now, having said that, if you can remember when you're drawing these cards, there are 2 or 3 cards that maybe hit the mountains, and you've drawn like 2 of those cards, or maybe you've drawn 3 of those cards. If you can kind of remember the card combinations, or generally like what areas get hit the most, and as you go through the deck, your turn deck, you're gonna learn that. You can intentionally station people in locations that you know are coming up, and you can kind of plan for that somewhat. But as you add more enemies that come in, what you're going to find is that your turns are going to be fewer and further between, and you're going to have a lot more damage that just generally comes your way. And also, until a region falls, if you're playing with 2 or 3 people, when a region falls, there is a card with 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 adventurers, that it's going to let you have actions that you can split amongst anybody. So that does help. But you'll kind of get to learn the deck a little bit. But you may shuffle the deck, and you may have 6 cards go before even one of your people, one of your adventurers, gets a chance to go and move. So it is very reactionary in that. So there is a bit of luck involved with this, but there are ways to somewhat mitigate it. But I'm kind of on the opposite end of that. I understand if you don't like that, if you want more strategy, then this may not be as appealing. But it's still, if that's not going to bother you, then you're going to love this. So this is the expansion. Oh no, sorry, that's not the expansion. This is the deluxe edition. So the deluxe edition just simply adds a couple more artifacts. We have Bale's Bait and the Gavel of Gamelin. And here are those items. And I'll need to add those to their respective decks here, because I don't know why I wouldn't play with them. It's going to also add a couple more dire animals, dire enemies, not animals, dire enemies to face. So there's a basilisk and a giant snake in the forest and plains respectively, or plains and forest respectively. So a couple more dire enemies. It's going to add a couple more epic foes, so a fire elemental in the desert and an overlord in the mountains. So that's cool. So you got a little bit more to play with there, and then it's going to add 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to add 5 more heroes to play. Now, I would just keep in mind these heroes are either going to have like some very specific special abilities, or for example, this Gamelin, the Guardian of the Order, looks suspiciously like the logo, right? His ability, defender ability, is after defending against a dire enemy, you may pay 1 additional life to reduce 1 threat level in the capital city. So that's an example of, normally you couldn't do that. If you play with this, you can. This is kind of a, I don't want to call it promo, because that wouldn't be fair to say, but this is an example of a card that kind of helps you break those rules a little bit. There's a Valkyrie Avenger. There is an Undead Revenant, Methuselah, the Sullied Human Necromancer, and a Goblin Assassin, Brutus, who basically can help you. He takes damage to ignore a card completely. So that's a good way. Maybe if he's gonna move, something's gonna move up twice, he may be a good one to use to kind of mitigate some of that damage. So that's the expansion. Cool? Cool. So give me 1 second. I'm going to get all this packed back up, get everything sorted, and get all these, like all this stuff baggy together, get it back in the box, and then we're going to take a look at the expansion, which I have not looked at myself in a while. So I've intentionally not looked at it so that I can be surprised when I open it. So give me 1 second. I'll be right back, and we'll check out more Tiny Epic Defenders by Gamelin Games. Alright, here we go. I went ahead and took the shrink off this just so we could get to it quicker. This is Tiny Epic Defenders, the Dark War expansion. You will need the base game, which I just covered, to play this. This is not a standalone. It does not add anything as far as the number of players. The playtime is going to be a little bit longer than the standard, but it's still just 1 to 4 players. So what does this add? So on the back, I'm going to read you this part right here right quick. The Dark War has affected Aughmoore. The invading evil could not be thwarted at our borders, and its darkness now spreads in every region, leaving villages and homesteads in ruins. Refugees huddle into caravans to flee for the protection of ITEMeeples, but certain death stalks them in their slow ox wagons. Aughmoore has never before had a more dire need for defenders. We must rise up, unite, and risk everything again to preserve what little spirit is left and to protect the few people that remain. So this is going to add a number of things. It's going to add some additional heroes. It looks like it's going to add some regions, cards to modify regions. It's going to add more foes, dire enemies, experience cards, skill cards, additional artifact cards. It's got some tokens, XP tokens. We have a caravan, manicore, great tree construct, soldier cards, storm tokens, death tokens, fleet dice, and boats. So a lot of stuff packed in this baby. So let's take a look and see what we got in here. So of course we have the rule book. Let's looking at the rule book here. Good component list in the front. Details about how the cards, how skills and experience works. How to do the campaign mode. That's pretty cool. Single game, Dark War region scenario. And there's some epilogues for the campaigns. I'm going to show you that. This is also pretty cool. They actually did this with Tiny Epic Galaxies. You can take this little... you can take this holder... Oh, there it goes. It's like it's not going to work, but it will. You can take this holder, and this holder is actually going to... you can slide both. You can see it's big enough. You can actually slide both boxes in this holder so that you have them together since there's expansions. And it's got the name on the top, Tiny Epic Defenders, the Dark War, and of course the Gamelin logo, which is pretty cool. I like that. Again, this is the deluxe edition, so I'm going to take this and set it to the side. So what do we got here? Let's get a little bit of room. Let's start with let's just start with the normal cards. We'll just take it out as we get it, right? So let me get these opened up. Opening the cards, and there's of course it had a little thing that I never can do. All right, so what do we got here? So level up. I guess this is. You spend XP. Looks like you. This card says you're spending XP and actions, which is kind of interesting. Oh, you gain XP by defending, escorting escorting a caravan into the capital city, or defeating a general. It looks like if you defeat a general, I don't know exactly what those look like, but if you defeat a general, then you gain 3 XP. So I guess you got to defeat some generals in order to move people in. Level up, gain 8 XP, or spend 8 XP to gain 1 new skill card and heal to full. So I guess that's how you can get some additional skills. That's pretty cool. So here's the skill cards. We've got Dodge, Ancient Wisdom, First Aid, Scout, Stealth, Potion Crafter, Acrobatics, Strength, etc., etc., etc. So you got pretty goodly number of skill cards, right? Different ones. That's pretty cool. Okay, so here's the generals. So these look like... Alright, so these generals basically to me, and this is, again, I haven't read the rule book, right? So I'm just guessing here. To me, these generals look like kind of a cross between something more than a dire enemy, but not as big as the final boss. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe you don't use the final bosses, I don't know. But there's a general, and again, there's one general. You got it for each location. We got a shade, a turtle, a killer snail, a rock, cyclops, a spider queen. So there's the generals, and then of course it's going to add, and this is what I do like about it, because now there's a bit more randomness, some more dire enemies. So we got a bog fairy, watchers, pterodactyl, pirates, yeti, phantoms. All right, like one for each location. So you could actually theoretically, with the expansion, I suppose, unless the book is going to tell us not to include the original, you could actually have some of both there. That's pretty cool. Then, of course, we have some more artifacts. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We got 6 more artifacts. We've got the Glaive of Return, the Tome of Lore, Tinkered Automation, Ale of Bravery, Magical Backpack, Dragon Familiar. So we've got all those, and of course all of the items to go with those. So that's cool. And then we have, I'm assuming these are the soldier cards. We have mercenaries. That's pretty cool. So on one side is mercenaries, and then on the other side are barbarians. So I guess somehow those change as you play. So that's pretty neat. I like that. That's actually a lot of cards. I didn't realize there'd be that many cards. Cool. I already showed you those. Then we have the fleet dice. There's 3 dice. It looks like it's 6 sides, so it's got one of each of the locations on it. And we've got some additional trackers, one of which has this little symbol. They're all like square cubes. Oh, XP trackers, and then these little square cubes that I don't know what they go for exactly. And then a whole nother stack of locations. Wow. I would be curious if you can like include these in your regular. Well, I'm sure you can. Well, I don't know. You might not be able to include these in the regular game without having to use everything from this. I don't know, but nevertheless. Oh, there's a capital. There's a. Oh. Yep. So here's additional locations. Again, 6 locations, one of each location, and the city. And it looks like there are some additional XP, spend XP to do some things in the city. So these cards are slightly different. I don't know if they would be replacements or not. Single game mode. Battle victory objectives. Escort all 6 caravans to the capital city. Defeat the epic foe. So it's just a card, I'm assuming. Oh, and here's how to play the campaign mode. How to do a chain multiple battles together. Yeah. Yep. Cool. So then we've got a handful of additional heroes. Now you'll notice on the cards, most of the cards, and even somewhere on all the locations, as well as these cards, you'll see this DW. That's how you know that is from the Dark War set, if these ever got mixed together. So now you've got a gnome tinkerer, a pigfolk gladiator, a birdfolk raptor, a lionkin charioteer, and an insectoid scion as playable characters. And of course their cards are the same as all the other hero cards that we've seen before. You have additional epic foes. You have the automaton, the ice golem, the sphinx, the tyrannosaurus, the dracolich. That's not good. And the lichen king. Again, one more foe for each location, which I think is pretty cool. To again add a little bit more variety. Now, one of the other things that this Dark War added, so some baggies, of course, is these boards, which appear to be punch boards for, I'm assuming, the caravans. Yeah, So it looks like caravans and then other various tokens for different things. Oh my. Those are in here. So, cool. Set these aside for now. And those will probably have to be, let's see here. I'm assuming those will have to be constructed. Yes, so I see boats, storm tokens, death tokens, the great tree, the manticore, and caravan. All those are things that have to be constructed. You can see these are 3D things. So that's what all of this is. So probably, I'm assuming probably what you would do is punch these out and just put them in a baggie and assemble them when you're ready to play, because I'm going to guess that based on the size, probably is not enough room to leave them all put together normally in the box. If it was, I would be pleasantly surprised, but I highly doubt that that's the case. Put that over there. And finally, so that is the normal box. There's nothing left. Nothing left. So now let's take a quick look at the deluxe content. So this deluxe content is going to, just as the previous product did, it's not going to change the game in rules-wise or anything, but it's going to add some components to the game. So we're going to add some additional, oh wow, that's pretty cool, some additional artifacts. Those artifacts would be the Skull of Bel, Skull of Bel, Aughmoore's Gambit. So, and both of these appear, you can spend XP, so that's kind of unique to the Dark War. Then we have more dire enemies: wolf rats, mimics, sirens, nomads. That will be the mountains, the ruins, the coast, and the desert. Wow, that's pretty neat. So I won't show those to you. I'll let you discover those on your own. So I'm just going to set those over here, so I have to add those. Set those right there, so I have to add those. Then we have some additional epic foes. We have the Vampire Lord, a giant mantis, a ghost ship, and a grotesque. So that would be for the forest, the coast, the ruins, and the plains. So we'll add those as well. Again, this is the deluxe content. And then we have 3 more heroes: the Dryad Conjurer, the Polarkin Armorer, and the Dwarf Mechanic, that are playable characters. So that is cool. And again, they're all the same. You have the turn options as far as how you can spend your actions. Of course, these 3 you're seeing, because it's the Dark War, you're seeing options to spend skill points. Or like in this case, he actually, when he draws, let's see, when you gain an artifact, draw 2 artifacts and keep 1. So he's much better at getting artifacts. That's pretty cool. That's the Polarkin Armorer. Cool. So there you go. That is everything out of that box. I'm going to show you one more item, and that is these player mats. They're not double-sided, just the standard mats, the standard thickness as all the other Gamelin mats. So you have your player card, experience card goes there, artifacts and skills. So, for example, I'm the Weaver. Oh, you can't really see that well, can you? My apologies. Let me get this stuff moved out of the way just a little bit. Moving it out of the way. Moving it out of the way. So you have your Weaver there. You may have, let's say you picked up the Dodge skill and Ancient Wisdom. Maybe you've got artifact card wise, you've got the Tome of Lore and the Tinkered Automaton there, and then it says experience card. I'm going to assume by experience card that is referring to this card. All right, and this card we looked at earlier. You can track your experience on it as it goes up and down. You're going to move your little token up and down as you spend experience and gain experience. So that's what the player mat does. Totally unnecessary. It's not going to change the gameplay in any way, but it's just cool to have everything out there where you can kind of lay it out. And I really like the mats. That's, like I said, it's not going to change the game, but it's just a really cool aesthetic and table presence item if you want it. If not, you do not have to have it to play. So don't go out and buy it, and don't get bummed if it's hard to find. I'm assuming at some point they will make that available to everyone, that wants it purchasable on their website. I don't know at what point in time that will actually happen, because again, as I said, this is the part of the Kickstarter, and so I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen, when they'll get all that released and sent out and whatnot. So, but when they do, if it is available, I think they're pretty neat, and I would recommend it, but it is not necessary. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is Tiny Epic Defenders 2nd Edition and Tiny Epic Defenders The Dark War. This is Game by Gameland Games. Awesome game. I'm looking forward to a playthrough soon of it, including the Dark War and all the components that go along with that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing. You guys are awesome. Thank you for making this possible, for supporting me by watching my videos on the channel. As always, if you see anything you have a question about, or you wonder about, or you want to see, drop a comment and let me know. And yeah, I think that's all the Board Game Rumor has for today. So until the next video, I'll see you later, guys. Bye-bye.